And let's turn to Revelation chapter 17. Now, we finished chapter 16 last week. And again, we see the 7 bowls or vials that are pouring out the 7 last plagues. And I believe that John is now going to go back like he's been doing and filling in more detail. Because I don't think this chapter 17 and 18 will come after the 7 last plagues. I mean, if they do, well, that means that Babylon isn't affected that much by the 7 last plagues. Which doesn't make sense to me, but then again, I'm not God. Aren't you glad for that? Yeah. So me. All right, chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials. Now, that's interesting. So, does it mean that, or is it prior to them with the 7 vials? Anyway, we'll look at that in a second. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So chapter 17 begins with John recording that he is approached by one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials. Now, the identity of this angel is not given, so we'd have to figure that it's not that important. Or it could have been a name that we wouldn't have known anyway. But he spoke to John, and he said, Come hither, I will show you the judgment. Now, the hither is also not identified. He said, Come hither. We don't know where he was. So we don't know where the hither was. But the angel is going to show John what is happening to Babylon. He called her the great whore that sits upon many waters. So the idea given here is one that rules over or influences the many. Now, since waters often refer to a multitude of people, we have the idea that this great whore has or is ruling over large masses of people. Perhaps many different nations are under her control. So, people have drawn conclusions because of that and because of a few other things in this particular chapter. In verse 2. John writes, With whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So, verse 2 indicates that the kings of the earth, the rulers, are in league with her. Excuse me, committing fornication with her. Now, the people of the different nations have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, that more than likely is spiritual fornication, although it could, refer to both spiritual and physical. This harlot has been identified over the years a lot as false religion under control of Rome. And it wouldn't bother me to say that it was. However, I do not think that it is the Roman Catholic Church that's under consideration, even though they do teach and preach a lot of falsehood. They aren't necessarily, at least not at this point, anti-God, are they? No, I said not necessarily. If you're teaching false stuff, then you are anti-God, but they're not overtly anti-God. They're not coming out and saying, no, God is... Now, they could change, I don't know. But let's keep going. So, it is true that Rome has control of many people throughout the world, and with the push, and this has been going on for a long time, to reunite all those who came out of Rome, it is possible the beast will use this false religious empire to gain a foothold with the people. I don't have a problem with that, thinking that at all. But Rome also has a powerful economic grip on the world, do they not? They're very wealthy, and we'll call them a religion. So, again, it would do us wise, we would be wise, to look at other false religious empires or groups that are prevalent even now in the world. When we have to understand that Islam has control of a lot of people. Communism, well, it's not a religion. Yes, it is, and they're very anti-God. Communism has control of a lot of people around the world, do they not? I guess there's an election coming up in Canada, and basically you have two groups that are vying for the control of the government, and the conservatives and the communists. They could be right across our border. So, there are other false religions that really are prevalent in the world today. There's New Age, there's humanism, there's, as I said, communism, there's socialism, there's, Islam, all kinds of different ones that it could be. Now, the idea of being the Roman Catholic Church started a long time ago because they were the biggest, the richest, and they seemed just to be everywhere. Well, they still seem to be everywhere, but so are some of these other groups and these other teachings. So, these false religions came out of the original Babylon, not the Catholic. But some of their teachings would have come out of the pagan ideas, because they tried to meld the pagan with Christianity. It didn't work then, it still doesn't. Now, the fornication mentioned here more than likely refers to the spiritual fornication, as I've already said, idolatry, and so on and so forth. So, we are looking at some form of religion. And some form of religion that would tend to want to control people. The reference to being made drunk would have reference to the people being led astray, as in a blind obedience. You know, Are they? Do we find a push in the world today where they would like everybody just to follow along with a blind obedience? Well, that's what's going to be under the Antichrist. But are we close enough? We don't know. Now, some people think that sane, rational thinking has been taken away at this time, replaced by that blind obedience, and people think there is a spirituality present. At least that's what they're going to think, but it's really nothing more than that spiritual fornication. So, there are a lot of people, especially the New Age people today, they love, to say things like, well, I'm a spiritual person. Well, they are. Problem is, the spirit that they're following is not the Spirit of God, but rather the spirit of false teaching, false religion. So Satan.
It seems like today governments want to remove God.
Oh, yeah.
So how does a religion then sway them? Well, how would it have to come in to gain their following?
The religion part?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at it this way. Those who are pushing socialism in our country, we can't talk about the rest, but those who are pushing socialism in our country want to make everybody think that they're being very spiritual. But are they? And I think the same thing is going to be going on here. It's amazing to watch some of the things going on just in our country, but around the world also. Like I said, with Canada, with other countries. And communism is a type of religion. Socialism is a type of religion. And so if people think, there are still a lot of people around the world who think that they are spiritual people. And so they're going to be, for lack of a better term, they're going to be buying all of this. They're going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And that's what we've been seeing throughout the book of Revelation. Question that we have is a lot of this that's going on leading up to it? We don't know. How long before the Lord comes back? We don't know. So, is this just a prelude? Well, let's read on and find out what's going on here. Because I believe that chapter 17 is showing what we would call spiritual Babylon. Verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So verse 3, John is being carried away out into the wilderness by the angel. So John records that he was in his spirit. The angel escorts John to the wilderness, which really has reference to a barren, desert-type region. That time of the year, sorry. But anyway, a barren, desert-type region. We think of wilderness today, and what do we think about? Mountains, trees, streams. Wilderness here refers to a desert-type region. It is devoid of life, and pretty much it's uninhabited, other than those who are nomads who will be traveling from here to there. But I believe that this shows the real thrust of false religion at this time. John records he saw a woman, the harlot, sitting upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So this appears to be who? Which would be the Antichrist. So, right. But so again, this appears to be the Antichrist. It appears that the woman is forming an alliance with the beast. The 7 heads and 10 horns have been shown before in Revelation chapters 12 and 13, refers to Antichrist under control of Satan. So now it seems as if Satan, who forms this alliance with false religion, wants to gain control of the people. Some of the people, even if they don't know Jesus as their Savior, but they belong to a church or group or whatever, some of them would want to refuse the mark of the beast. An alliance between the beast and this woman, false religion, would then see these religious people are following, well, the Antichrist. So it seems now as if Satan, again, wants that control of the people, and the negotiations take place in secret, in the wilderness, away from where the people can see. So John is now going to give description of the woman. Verse 4. And a woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So she wants to come across looking innocent, but she's going to be anything but innocent. She wore purple, scarlet. These are the colors signifying royalty, wealth. That would be the purple. Conquering and iniquity. That would be the scarlet. So she is bejeweled with gold and precious gemstones and pearls. She's flaunting her riches. She's using them to prove she is to be followed. She is self-important with a pompous attitude of self-righteousness. But if she doesn't know Jesus as her Savior, how could she be righteous? It's self-righteousness. She holds a golden cup that is filled with abominations and filthiness resulting from her fornications. This has reference, I believe, to moral lewdness, uncleanness, and just plain ugly filth. She is spiritually deformed, but she appears to be righteous. She appeals to the base nature of mankind, giving the impression of both being right and then giving man what man wants. So, Verse 5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. I need to go find some place. Yeah, my sinus is draining like crazy. So in verse 5, John sees a name written on the forehead of the woman. And that name is Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, abominations of the earth. So, under law, in a lot of societies during John's day, harlots were required to write a name on their forehead by way of identification. Some, they would have to cut their hair in a certain way, wear certain clothing, but they had to identify themselves as harlots. So it tells who and what she is, excuse me, and where her allegiance lies. Now, the word mystery means a secret, perhaps alluding to her hidden agenda, the work of Satan, and the fall of mankind. The other three names all give reference to Babylon, from whence comes all false religions. So, verse 6, and I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And that admiration doesn't mean, whoa, what a, no. In verse 6, John witnesses the woman drunken with the blood of saints, which may be her wine of verse 2. This blood is from, I believe, both Old Testament and New Testament saints, martyrs for the cause of Christ. Now, the very word martyr refers to those murdered for standing for truth. This would also take in tribulation saints killed by Antichrist. So John stood in amazement and awe at the scope of this woman's degradation, horrifying disgust. Maybe too light a term for what John was feeling and thinking. So that admiration had nothing to do with thinking that she was some kind of wonderful person or thing. It was actually pure disgust on his part. And in verse 7, and the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. So the angel then asked John how he could marvel at the woman. Why do you stare in amazement at this woman is and what she has been able to do? The angel then tells John he will reveal the true identities of the woman and the beast. So what's he going to tell John? What's he going to tell us? So, verse 8. The angel continues talking to John. He said, the beast that thou sawest was and is not. Well, that clears a lot of things up, huh? The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. So, verse 8. The angel tells John that the beast which he saw was and is not. It appears, excuse me, it appears that the angel was telling John that this beast did exercise power or authority at one time, but at that time, which would be John's time, the beast was not in that authority. The next phrase is kind of intriguing all by itself. This beast is about to ascend out of the abyss, the bottomless pit, and will exercise authority once again. Apparently, this beast will use the power of the abyss to gain control, and possibly it refers to the mock death and resurrection that the Antichrist will go through. His ultimate goal is to go into perdition, actually lead into perdition, all that he can. Such hatred for God, and in particular Jesus, we see someone who would just as soon go into the lake of fire for eternity just so he can lead a bunch of people there himself. So, all the unsaved of the earth will marvel at the accomplishments of the beast. These are they whose names are not written in the book of life, which has been in existence since the foundation of the world. Just keeps it up. Now, those who believe in Calvinism would say, well, that proves that all these names, including ours, were written there from before the foundation of the world. No. It's not what that's talking about, but that's a different study at this point. Lost mankind will see the accomplishments of the beast and will be duped into thinking this is very mystical, such as fate or destiny or whatever. Think about how many of you were entertained by the original Star Wars? Yeah, it was kind of fun to go watch him. But think about it. This is your destiny, Luke. Forces of the universe, whatever, the spiritualism, the humanism, the New Age, it's all in there. They were fun to watch, but there are people who actually believe in some of that. And they're going to think that all of this, we just can't believe that anybody else could ever stand up to the beast. They will see with their eyes, but they will have no real understanding. They will be taken in by the farce of Satan instead of looking at the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus. So, absolutely.
It appears that he's going to be killed and then miraculously revived.
Yep.
That's
That unholy trinity. So, verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And that one verse. Well, hang on. Yeah. So the angel then goes into the interpretation of all that John had just witnessed. The angel starts in verse 9 by stating that here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains upon which the woman sits. Now the word mountains refer to, guess what? Mountains or hills. Mountains also will refer to governments in Scripture oftentimes. So we are being shown some governmental control or alliance by the woman, or at least governmental acceptance of the woman, giving her great influence. Now, some like to point out that Rome is built on 7 hills. Very possible. And I have not been able to ascertain if Babylon, ancient Babylon, was built on 7 hills or 7 mountains. Don't know. But before we reach any kind of conclusion, which we'll call a definitive conclusion, let's go to verse 10. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Now, how many Caesars were there? Nero, Titus, did you say Augustus?
Nero, and then who followed Nero? The one that was in power when this was written was Nero.
Well, don't forget Julius Caesar.
Before Judas, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula. Then Nero would be the one alive at that time, and then there was one to come.
Well, there was Titus after Nero. He was a general, but he became
His father was Trajan. It was Titus's father. He followed, there was a whole bunch of followed.
yeah,
And some of them only lasted a few days.
but
The one that came about on a kind of a permanent was Trajan, and then after Trajan died, then Titus took over.
right. But think about what the angel just told John, that there are 7 kings to be considered. 5 are fallen, we'll presume dead. 1 was in power at that time, and 1 was to come. The 7th will be in power a short time. The 8th comes up in verse 11. Brother Sean?
I think the 7th is still yet to come.
Well,
After Nero, like I said, there was just a whole bunch of, a lot of palace intrigue, and they were killing each other.
right. But I don't believe that this is referring to the Caesars.
No, well, I think part of it could be the Caesars, but that number 7, he's still off there in the future somewhere.
I had it figured out. Babylon, Medo-Persian, Greeks, the Romans,
We're getting there. Hang on.
Roman Empire, man's sin, reincarnated man's sin. That's only 7. I don't know. I had it figured out one time.
I'm, yeah. I'm just bringing out what, people have believed.
Historical, and he says the one who is now. Now, who is now? Now have to been Nero.
Well,
Well, that's not true either.
anyway, hang on for a minute. Let's get through the rest of this. Hold your thought here, boy. So, the angel is telling John that there are 7 kings to be considered. 5 are fallen, 1 was in power at that time, and 1 was to come. The 7th will be in power a short time. The 8th, verse 11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So, if what we understand that these are kingdoms, the way, some believe that these are kingdoms, as opposed to what? Real mountains, because they're governments. Then the 8th would be Antichrist, who dies and was resurrected, and he has the same agenda, which, by the way, he hasn't done it yet, has he? But he dies, or he has the same agenda and the same thirst for power as the other 7. He is of them. He is the one who will lead his followers into perdition, which is probably the lake of fire. Now, some will think that all of this refers to the 5 previous kings or rulers, starting with Nebuchadnezzar, then Belshazzar, Darius, Cyrus, and Alexander. Excuse me. They would then lump the Caesars together as being number 6. Others see this as a reference to 5 Caesars who were in power together as being number 6. Others sees this as a reference to 5 Caesars who were in power before John, with number 6 in power right then, and a 7th coming for a short period. Still others see this as referring to kingdoms, such as Babylon, Egypt, Assyria, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Everyone agrees that the 8th is pointing to Antichrist, who will reign for a short time in comparison to the others.
I get the 4 of Daniel's vision, Assyria and Egypt, the great world powers. That's what I thought.
Who's number 7?
That's 6, 7 would be revitalized Roman Empire. In the middle of the week, he is incarnated by Satan, which would be number 8. He only reigns for a short period of time, and that's what the Bible, Revelation 10 says, time and time and time and a half. The devil knows he only has a short period.
Right.
That's kind of where I am.
Yeah, and some people think that that just means that he will come into full control and power during the last 3.5 years, and that's the times and half a time.
At least that's, I made it logical in that those 7 nations revitalized in the age being man.
All of it could be considered logical, I don't know, but
They go from kingdoms to an individual.
he'll have a kingdom. It's called the world. Yeah. So the question was, how do we go from a kingdom to an individual? Well, Nebuchadnezzar was ruling over a kingdom. So you have an individual king and his kingdom. All right.
Mountains, I go with Rome. Kingdoms, great rivalry, kingdoms.
Based on Daniel's visions, Rome was the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't go beyond, Daniel doesn't go beyond the fourth.
Great Bible nations, you have to include.
Right. But at the same time, it's just, I'm really glad that the angel is clearing this all up for us.
And when I always thought it was Rome, then I read an article by a guy that mentioned all the cities of the world that actually have are built on 7 hills. And there's more than a couple of cities that are built on 7 hills.
And there's a reason for that. It gave, protection. Anyway. So, there are going to be 7 kings. 5 are fallen. 1 is. And the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So that 7th is still kind of a, if it is a kingdom or a king, it's still kind of mysterious. So, verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet. But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've often wondered, does the Bible make it explicitly clear that the man of sin will be the next world ruler? Will there be one world rulers prior to him?
Well,
Are we certain that if there's going to be a next world ruler, it will be?
we can't say that for 100% accuracy.
Could be the gateway.
Pardon?
Could be the gateway for.
Could be a gateway. It could be we could say that it could be a governmental entity.
They're pushing for it mainly right now.
Mm-hmm. But is that one that's coming, or the one that they're pushing, will that be the Antichrist or
That's my question.
interim? I don't know.
Does the Bible necessarily mean that the next would be the one?
No, but it appears that that would be the case.
It does, and I lean that way, but I've often wondered.
So,
It does.
yeah.
It does
So, that's okay. In verses 12 through 14, we find that it refers to the 10 horns, which, explain the angel, are 10 kings who are given 10 kingdoms or regions and are in league with Antichrist for 1 hour. Now, this term also means a season, so it's not a specified period of time. Could be that last 3.5 years. Don't know. Their allegiance is to the beast, and they are in unity in supporting him and giving of their strength, in other words, their armies and so on, to his cause. They even do the bidding of the beast in waging war against the Lamb. The Lamb shall destroy their army, for no troop of men could ever overcome him. He is Lord of lords, King of kings. And he has the army with him, the called, the chosen, and the faithful, which I believe we'll call his bride. So, question I have at this point is that another preview of what's going to take place at Armageddon? Or is that a preview of Gog and Magog? Well, we'll try to figure that out as we go along. Verse 15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples. So the waters at the beginning are people, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Well, they're going to turn on her.
Religion and politics never mix. They will use each other just like wars do, but in the end, politics will always come out on top.
They'll want to destroy. Yeah. So the angel continues in verse 15 by explaining that the waters of verse 1 are indeed people. Apparently, all the world will be under the spell of the harlot, or at least they'll be watching what she says, watching what she recommends, and as she points them to the beast, they're going to go for it. For they will seek to have all worship, the 10 kings will seek to have all worship go toward the beast, so they're going to vehemently oppose the harlot, the false religion, because the false religion will want to have adoration and a following for themselves. They're not going to have any of that. They want all worship to go toward the beast. They shall destroy her as far as her influence is concerned, as far as her majesty is concerned, as far as her beauty is concerned. And she'll be stripped of everything and burned to the ground. She will be completely consumed by the beast through these 10. Now, when is that going to happen? Because the false prophet is still going to be active at the end of Tribulation the Great. Right? Because we already know that the false prophet and the beast will be the first 2 inhabitants of the lake of fire. Verse 17, kind of interesting. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill this, or his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Oh, which great city?
Really, I guess, really true global power. Like most of the known world at that time.
Right. But there were people scattered.
So it's scattered. I mean, Rome wasn't even a glimmer of an idea at the time. Babylon was,
Right.
and then, of course, there was the Chinese.
Catholicism. There's Istanbul.
Well, okay, let's look at this. The angel, yeah, the angel is clear to point out that this is still God's judgment. He is the one who is directing this tribulation, is he not? He is the one who directs them to give their all to the beast, that God's words are fulfilled or completed. And then in verse 18, the angel states very matter-of-factly that the woman is that great city. Now, the only one, I believe, that would qualify, because of all the other descriptions, and plus what we're going to get into in chapter 18, would be Babylon. Her name means confusion. Her ideals, her philosophies, her goals, her desires have shaped the world and the world's thinking. And this is a picture of the world given over to all things anti-God. So I don't think that it's any... There are those who think that, especially when we get into chapter 18, that the description is referring to maybe a place like New York. America is not, that we can tell, mentioned in the scriptures. There is, I forget which one it is, which verse it is now, but there is a verse in the Old Testament that refers to the great eagle. In the same way that the bear, people take that as Russia. The great eagle, that could be United States. But I'm not buying into that. I'm just saying that the teaching is out there. But
So does it have to be a literal city, or could it be the idea of Babel? And from the inception of the Tower of Babel, the whole idea of false religion.
yeah, it's possible that, I mean, we could say that it might be the well, we'll say the ideals, the origin of false religion, but it doesn't have to. Number one, I see more of ancient Babylon in here. And is the Antichrist going to have New Babylon as his capital city? Don't know. But there's some interesting things coming up, Brother Tom.
So with this, John Beth's book, Rome was the political, economic, military,
Correct.
They were the political power, they were the religious power, they were, I mean, with that Caesar cult, I don't know, it was rampant during that time, Caesar was regarded as a deity. The political, religious, economic, military, all the power was centered in Rome.
But John never mentions Rome.
Well, I had a discussion with a friend of mine one time about that. And at that point in time, John was a prisoner of Rome,
Mhm.
the Isle of Patmos. And if he had come right out and mentioned Rome, they would have censored it. So this letter that he was writing to go out to the various churches, he kind of disguised it, implying that it might be Rome, but it could be something else.
Paul refers to Rome as spiritual Babylon.
Now, any false religion is
Yeah.
Paul refers to the city of Rome as Babylon in one of his letters. So he does. He refers to Rome as Babylon. I'm not saying that proves anything, but he does.
Just, yeah.
Well, like I said, we were just kind of, this free-for-all discussion. He mentioned the idea that, Paul had to disguise his rhetoric in order to keep the Romans from censoring what he was writing.
Don't know. But there's a lot that he's going to be presenting in chapter 18. So let's just keep all these thoughts. Come back next week, and we'll see what chapter 18 brings out. And let's stand.
I haven't answered the question until now.
I'm going to be here to see it.
People have written about it still. Yes, yes.
So. All right. Brother Sean, would you dismiss us, please?